Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, this is Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. And I have a new friend here today, Rik Schnabel, who is a mindset and NLP expert. He's had a wealth of experience in life and in business, helping people navigate tough times and be able to really kind of uncover their peak performance. And I think particularly in the economic climate that we're in, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of businesses who are going through really tough times. But I think in these tough times, there is a tremendous opportunity in order to tap into exponential growth. And that requires you to have the right mindset in order to do that. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. So Rik, thanks for making the time, mate. How you doing?
I am doing fantastically. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the program.
Mate, looking forward to having a chat. So for those who may not know you or be familiar with your work, give us a little bit of your origin story, mate.
Okay. The place that I was at before I started Life Beyond Limits was kind of like the place I had to be. You know, people sometimes don't take action on problems until they hit their brick wall or their worst possible scenario. And I was at a point that, I was born from migrant parents. They had a poverty mindset, which, came from their conditioning. They were born in Germany during, just prior to World War II, depression. Then all of a sudden the war broke out and it was a horrible time for them. They were under Hitler's rule, which was, we all know how that all turned out. And so they then migrated to Australia. And of course, they came with all their baggage. One suitcase each, but a whole bunch of baggage. And so I was brought up in that world. So I only knew that world. So I knew a world of poverty. You complained about your bills. You did what all poor people do. You try to get the best deal when you buy things. And you buy stupid things you don't need. You waste money everywhere. You save and spend, but you never invest. And it was really at the point where I was 40. So I'd lived for 40 years with depression, anxiety, and a whole bunch of problems and money issues. When I found myself at a point, my wife reported to me that we just had our first child, down to $27 in our bank account. And I was freaking out. Like, I'm thinking to myself, this is it. We've finally hit this point. I'm going to be homeless. And I just pictured my wife, my newborn child, my daughter, and I in a laneway. And I was living in Melbourne, so I was imagining ourselves living in, Flinders Lane, in a laneway, in a box or, under newspapers or something. And it was such a horrifying thought. But prior to that, I had learnt neuro-linguistic programming. I had graduated as a coach. I also worked with a crazy American guy who started saying, Rik, do you realize that your financial world is all up here? It's all here. It's not your skills. It's not your values. It's not your assets. It's all up here. And I was working in a sales job at the time, and I was doing the worst ever job of it. The sales director said, you, my friend, are the worst salesperson in the history of this company. And, what does that really mean? To give you a sense of this, in 8 months, I brought in a grand total of $3,500.
Wow.
So, that's a death knell. So I'm thinking homelessness, lose job, I'm going to lose everything, and that's going to be the rest of my life. So I did something. I worked with a coach, and this coach said to me, Rik, your biggest problem is sales, right? Let's focus on that. So he said, what do you think of salespeople? And I said, and I felt my answer coming up. And I said, they're sleazy. They'll sell their own grandmother. I don't trust them, etc. Which, by the way, is BS, belief system. And essentially what he said is, he said, that's your problem. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself being the best salesperson in the history of this company. The opposite. Tell me what you feel or think as a result. And I thought, God, I don't even trust myself now. And he said, this is a values conflict. You value kindness, you value honesty, you value being a good person, you're a people pleaser. That's your problem. He said, you've got to shift this. So we did some work. To cut a very long story short, there was quite a few things that happened in that moment, but all of a sudden, I started getting phone calls that I would make half a year's income in a phone call. And all of a sudden, these, my annual salary, which I had prior to the sales role, I was making a month. So I started making my annual salary in a month. And, a friend of mine said to me, oh my God, you're earning more than John Howard, who was the Prime Minister at the time. And he said, you work a tenth of the time he does. You have commitments. He has this. And you're living life large now. And it was such an incredible difference, but it fueled me. I got so excited. I wrote a book about it and it became a bestseller. And people from all over the world said, how do you do this? How do I shift? How do I change? And I found myself feeling so on purpose. And it was so rewarding helping people to go from a poverty mindset into a richer way to think. And that's how I ended up here. It had to happen.
Mate, that's phenomenal. It's interesting as you recount that, because I share a lot of things in common with your experience. And it's interesting that you sometimes have to hit rock bottom in order to then discover the pathway to greatness and reaching your fullest potential. And as the old saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher presents itself. Yeah. Now, have you ever pondered an alternate reality where maybe you weren't doing it so tough? Maybe you were just kind of cruising through life. And if you had encountered that same mentor who was trying to impart those kind of pearls of wisdom to you, do you think the result would have been different?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think a lot of us actually could be doing better, but we're in a comfort zone. And, people are like pillows. They just find that comfortable, warm, beautiful spot and they just stay there. And their life becomes their comfort. To actually get to a point of discomfort, into a new life, there's usually that one corridor of a bit of discomfort. Till you get to a new realm. I'll give you a classic example. It's in another topic, but, there's one particular gentleman has got incredible knowledge, very smart man, but very dumb in that he's stuck in his comfort zone and he modeled his parents' patterning, as to how you raise kids. And he was very strict. He would scream at his kids, all of this. So he's with me saying, how do I fix this? My wife has left me. I go, okay, we can't guarantee your wife's going to come back. We've got to help you be the new you. And so I did some work with him. He discovered that he was just modeling his mother. His mother used to shout at him at meals and all of that. And I said, I want you to be fun father. I want you to take the pressure off your kids. I want your kids to be kids, you to be the adult, but also bring out your kid as well. And I said, the first thing that happens, he complained that his daughter wasn't eating at the dinner table. I said, well, that's quite obvious. You put someone under stress, their gut tightens up. And they're not going to eat because their gut's tightened up, because their brain is saying, I'm going to have to run in a moment, so don't put any food in there. And so I got him to report back to me every day as to how fun father's going. And he said, oh my God, it's such a difference. The kids are eating, they're happy, I'm happy, and sometimes some little tweaks make a big difference, but most of us really need something major to happen.
Mm.
Unfortunately, most of us wait until that something big happens, and then it's a dramatic problem.
Yes. And it's a lot of stress and anxiety, right? And it's
Yeah.
unhealthy. Like one of the beliefs that I've always had is the situations you learn to survive, your survival ultimately depends upon. And we
Yes.
create these neural pathways, these synapses, these connections. And our brain doesn't necessarily associate the difference between a good situation and a bad situation. It just knows we can survive it. And it
Yes.
becomes like Groundhog Day. And I see so many people creating this vicious cycle of this roller coaster ride, particularly in business, of having amazing results, falling into hardship, and then proving that they can get themselves out of the hardship and back to amazing results. Is that a common theme that you observe, Rick?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you're doing such great work in this space, and you understand mindset as well as I do, and you know that people will often do this. But you know, um, like my story went on, things were going really, really good,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden we had, a downturn in the economy at one particular point. And I realized that I went from a very poor lifestyle to trying to make up for everything that I never got.
Mm.
And I looked through my house. In my garage, there were boxes of things that I bought on a whim that weren't even opened. There were, we used to have a guy used to come to our house, every few weeks to sell us French red wine, and I was living this incredibly large lifestyle. And we then had a downturn. But I realized that what people do is that, they might be doing badly. Let's say that, your finances start to improve, and all of a sudden there's this big gap. That big gap is a massive opportunity for investment.
Mm.
But what do people do? They go spend, 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 get a more
Yes.
prestige car, get a bigger house, get someone to deliver expensive French wine to you, you know, and what you end up with is you may be earning, hundreds and hundreds of thousands or even millions, but your overheads start to match it. Then
Bang
the
on.
downturn comes, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, do you mean I have to get rid of the wine guy? you know, and people just, it's insanity. It
Mm.
really, really is. And I think the hardships that many people are facing right now, of course, many of us have theories about what's going on, and that can get very dark, of course. But the thing that we've really all got to wake up to is that we're thinking far too short term. We're getting too comfortable, and we're not thinking long term at all. I mean, we're going to hit a massive crisis, pretty soon. There's a lot of people retiring, and many, particularly the baby boomers, there was no forced superannuation for many of them. And they're all going to get to a point where they're going to go, oh my God, how am I going to keep my lifestyle going in retirement? And of course, I can't.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I believe the worst addiction is comfort. And with that observing and everything you're talking about, mate, there's so many similarities, right? Of this cash flow creep. I've gone through it too.
Yeah.
And when you get to that level of comfort, and I've tried to avoid self-sabotage, I've tried to synthetically create hardship through martial arts and through physical training. I do ultra running now. I'm actually running my first 60-kilometer ultra marathon next
Congratulations.
Sunday.
Ooh.
And I find it's just reminding myself of my power and my strength and my ability to persevere has been really helpful. But there are people out there who haven't endured a lot of hardship. Um, Maybe they've had it okay, right? They maybe come from a modest upbringing. They've never gone without anything. They've kind of gone through life and achieved some level of success. Maybe not necessarily high performers, but they certainly haven't gone through really tough times. Can those people synthetically create these catalysts for change? And how do they escape the grasps of this comfort, Rick?
I think I think a lot of us, quite often, what we're aiming to do is, like that old analogy where, spending money we don't need to spend to try to impress people we don't even know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are trying to live a particular lifestyle. I had an incredible crash in, that time that I was sharing. It was 1998. Sorry, 2008. And what basically happened was my whole lifestyle needed review, and I began to look at my life. Hugo Boss suits, prestige cars, gold watches, and I thought, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. I am trying to create this impression that is costing me a fortune. My ego has become the most expensive thing I own. And I went, that's it. No more prestige cars, no more gold watches, no more Hugo Boss suits, none of this. So, I was bragging the other day that I bought a $10 pair of jeans, and, I'd be the guy that would spend 180, 280 on a pair of jeans. That's stupid. That's just dumb, because, these are things that are just going to end up at the salvos, and I think a lot of us, to create a more synthetic opportunity, is we've got to create our own crash, revise our own lives and look at it. Like, many of us have got incredible assets. I'm working with a guy at the moment who, unfortunately, his whole system of share on the share market was terrible. He lost $3.5 million, which was the lion's share of his self-managed super fund. And I said to him, "What if you had a good system, that wouldn't have happened?" But he was living this lavish life as well, constantly buying to impress people around him. And, this created a big, big problem in his life. So I think synthetically, what we've really got to do is we've got to stop at this point and get off the hamster wheel and really review our life and think, how long-term is my vision? Am I thinking about my later years, or am I thinking about tomorrow or the next lunch? And I think synthetically, I think we all should be thinking in this particular way. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in these next few years. It seems like there's some people that are hell-bent on having World War III. And, if that happens, the lion's share of us, except for the baby boomers perhaps, and, and the older ones, we haven't experienced a war. We don't know what supply, what end of supply could be.
Yes.
So, I know this sounds terrible, and being an NLP trainer, people might be saying, what? That's not so positive, Rik. Well, no, it isn't. But the thing is that I believe the positive opportunity here is to get out of la la land, and really start to wake up. Many people's assets could diminish in so many different ways. There are a lot of forces out there that actually, are not working with us, are actually working against us, and anything could happen. So I would do a complete review, and I'd be going, okay, do we need to downshift our properties? Do we need to tighten up our policy of investing? What do we need to do? Because anything could happen.
It's really interesting, mate. And as you talk about this, I have my vintage gold watch on my desk for this very reason, as a reminder, because very similar to you, I found that as I made more money and I bought more things, it was a band-aid solution for unresolved things with myself, within myself. Yeah. And the more things I accumulated and the more things I bought and the more expensive belongings that I had, the unhappier I was.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that, my watch now is an Apple Watch, but it's purely for function with all of my running and fitness and stuff. I haven't worn this in years. It literally just sits on my table as a reminder. All of my clothes I buy secondhand pretty much, except the kind of branded company stuff.
Yeah.
And it was that, as you rightly said, that synthetic creation of realizing that there's a Stoic principle that says the man to fear is the one who has nothing to lose. And we have this attachment to all of these inanimate things that are
Yeah.
superficial and really serve very little value. And we place so much value in them. And it's interesting in modern society, the idea of richness, of being rich, is buying things that are just impractical, right? Like somebody could go and buy a touring four-wheel drive and spend 200,000, but that's not seen as wealth. And in contrast, could go spend 200,000 on a Ferrari, which is so impractical, but they're put on a pedestal because of that impracticality. And it's
Yes.
really interesting when people like us have had some level of enlightenment. And I'm still very early in my journey. I learn every day and I'm always trying to work on myself. But there are, as you rightly said, so many people in la la land that unless they do something, they're going to have a very scary wake up call at some point in the future and realize how vastly unprepared they are.
Absolutely. And I've seen this so many times in my coaching sessions. You'll be working with someone. I remember a particular gentleman. One question I often ask is, what happens if we fail? If we don't get to where you want to get to in our coaching, what happens if we fail? And this guy said, that's not an option. And I said, awesome. That's a great commitment because we're got to work together. We're going to work together 100%. And I said, so what happens if we fail? He said, as I said, not an option. I said, well, tell me what happens. And he said, I lose my wife. I lose access to my kids. I lose anywhere between 40 to 70% of my net worth. It all erodes. All my success is gone if that happens. And I said, awesome. Let's get into what's really important and let's get your relationship back together. And I think a lot of us, everything's values. It's basically people value that success or wealth or notoriety or status, whatever it might be. It means everything under that is less. And so things fall away, our relationships with our family, our partners, begin to become secondary to this incredible goal. But it's all about our conditioning. I used to work on the dark side. I was in advertising and, we used to sell, we were very good at selling useless products to people who didn't need them. And I realize now that our conditioning from the very moment we are born is our problem. We have become conditioned. You just sit in front of a television for, commercial station for long enough, and you're going to feel inadequate.
Yeah.
And something that I remember back in the advertising days, one of the highest costs of advertising usually is around the Sunday movie, or the news. The reason the news is so expensive is because it's very somber in tone. So it's 1 million people just died. We've had tornadoes, hurricanes. Oh my God, it's shocking. It's terrible, etc. And then all of a sudden the ad goes, oh, what a feeling. Spend your money,
Yes.
And so what people do is they realize that they've had all of this tension and then all of a sudden it's alleviated with an ad. And now I feel better. And I don't know why I need a new car, but I've just got to go out and buy a new car. Now I'm looking at my other car going, it's not shiny enough. Brakes could be better, creating reasons to basically spend more money. My neighbors don't look at me anymore like they did when I first drove that shiny thing up the driveway. I need my neighbors to look at me. Now, it's not that conscious. It's so unconscious. And our world, the thing that we've got to protect with all our might is our consciousness, because it is being stolen every single day. The ads are stealing bits of it. The educational system is telling us, that this is how you need to learn. In one of our courses, I said to our students, I said, answer me this. In your whole education, primary, secondary, tertiary, adult education, when were you ever taught to learn? And I had often many teachers in my course, and they'd be going, oh my God, yeah, it's true. We never teach kids to learn. No, because we want to condition them.
Mm.
That's what it's all about. And I think humanity needs to wake up to this, because if we don't learn to learn, and we don't learn to master our own consciousness, we've lost. Humanity has lost the game.
Bang on. And I think
I
this is the
believe,
value of this work, this NLP. Like I've done a lot of NLP work. I preach the value of it. My biggest breakthroughs have come off the back of working with people like yourself, Rik. And I think the interesting thing is that we've got these subconscious lenses and filters that we don't even realize are on,
yes,
that are completely controlling how we choose to see the world. And it's not until you work with someone like yourself that you're able to understand those and actually get into the driver's seat of changing those filters to what you want them to be. So I think that's the power of the work that you do. So mate, if you had to describe your ideal client, who's the perfect person that you would like to be working with?
the person that I find I work with the most and love working the most is someone who is just starting to wake up. They're not completely asleep. In truth, no one who is asleep really ever works with me, because they don't even know they've got problems. They don't even know the cause of their problems. Metacognition, understanding what are the thoughts underneath the thoughts, very few people have. So the ideal person is starting to wake up, and they're starting to wake up because things are not going so right in their lives. They're starting to realize that their relationship isn't what it used to be. Their joy of going to work, doing what they do, isn't what it used to be. So I love working with business owners, because the thing that's great about a business is it's got incredible upside. You can fix anything in a business, harder in a job, because there's caps, and they won't let you earn, it's that whole, you earn just enough to keep you in the job, and just enough not to leave. But the thing is, in a business, it's fantastic because you can come up with a new idea and you can double the business. You can massively improve the business. But in the saying so, I find I'm getting more and more and more responsible, even in businesses. I don't like working with businesses that don't do good in the world, that don't add value to our communities, because I think that's where we've got to be strong. We've got to help each other now. We can't be the soloists, the individuals out there doing it. We've actually got to start working together, which is, I think, the way of the future.
I agree, mate. And I think people are waking up to that too, of realizing that this isn't a selfish endeavor, that they need to be delivering more value than they're taking in return. So, mate, if people have listened or watched this and they've liked what you've had to say and they want to get in touch to explore how they could potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way to reach us is Life Beyond Limits, our website, which is just lifebeyondlimits.com.au. There's a contact page there. They can find out who they want to contact and for what reasons. There's also some freebies on the site if they like that sort of stuff. I know a lot of people want to kind of get a sense of you and all of that. There's lots of ways to do that, but that's the best way.
Beautiful. We'll include the links in the show notes. Now, mate, wrapping up, if you had to give us one last pearl of wisdom that people could take away and action as a result of our conversation today, what would that last pearl of wisdom be?
The last pearl of wisdom is probably a bit of a no-brainer, but the thing is that I would aim to create some level of clarity, about what you really, really, really want from life. I think that's a question that most people never even ask themselves, because it's too hard. It's infinite opportunity. They could do anything, be anything, but clarity is really where it's at. If you can get clear I saw a statistic that said 87% of people don't even like their jobs. That's a huge amount of lack of clarity. So we all should love our jobs. We all should love what we do, and so clarity is really my
Beautiful.
tip for people.
Mate, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom. This has been fantastic. And guys, make sure you jump on the links in the show notes. And remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure that you implement what we've covered on our conversation today. And we'll catch you next time on the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. Rik, thanks again, mate, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you, Jackson. It's been a pleasure and an honor being on your program. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.